Hello everybody and welcome back to a slightly different episode of the My Generation podcast. I'm your host Max, and today we've got another solo episode and we're changing it up a little bit. I'm out in the beautiful Kent sunshine. It's the end of June currently as of the time of recording of this podcast. So I thought I would take a walk down to the river and sit and record this one outside. See how you like the change in tone. Sounds like I'm right next to a waterfall, if I'm honest, but let me know what you think. I'll leave a poll in the comments below or in the description just to ask you whether you prefer outdoors or indoors or the vibe of the podcast at the moment. So yeah, today's episode we're talking about films that changed your life. We're talking about this because I recently saw a couple of films that I absolutely adored, and I just wanted to go over how they've changed me personally, changed my viewpoints, and what has happened for other people as well, and how other films have changed them. So I just wanted to go over a few for me first before we get into all of the wonderful comments we got. I've got loads of comments here. I've got 2 pages worth of people's replies telling me what their favourite films were. They got in touch with me by adding me on Facebook, the friends I know, and letting me know when I put out questions asking for different people's opinions about what influences you. So, the first ones that I would like to go through for me, first example is a movie called The Place Beyond the Pines, which I saw yesterday, which partially gave me the inspiration to start recording this here for you today. The Place Beyond the Pines was a beautiful, beautiful movie, and it surprised me, it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to like it so much, especially after the first 45 minutes. It felt like quite a safe movie, quite a good movie, but quite a safe one, and it just hit home. There was something about the wanting to redeem a bad act, and how sometimes getting too involved in something can actually prove detrimental. Because obviously it follows Ryan Gosling's character, who is he's just figured out that he has a son that he didn't know he'd had with a woman during a fling he'd had the previous year. And when having this moment, he decides to stay and tries to fix things, tries to make things better. But as a result, ends up making life a lot worse for not just him, but the people around him. And it's how the film spirals out of control because of the decisions he and the people around him made. And also pure passion, father-son passion, a longing to care, and how sometimes caring doesn't always have the intended results. I also saw a movie called The Fountain somewhat recently. I talk about this movie a lot with people, so if you know me in real life, you know how much I love The Fountain. It's a great movie that will teach you a lot about life and love. Its key messages are about how fighting death isn't necessarily the way to go, and how actually sometimes it's about embracing it, about how death creates new life, and how it's not just a bad thing. Absolutely adored the movie. Also, I'm going to do my best to link every single movie that's recommended by myself or someone else in the comment section below, because they're all worth checking out. And there are a lot of movies actually on this list that I'm about to read out of people who I don't actually know what they are. I haven't seen them before, I've heard of most of them, but I haven't seen a lot of them. And so I'm probably going to get around to checking out most of this list. Another movie I saw which was good was called Her. It's by Spike Jonze, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Came out in 2013. Again, taught me a lot about how love can mean different things to different people, what truly is love, what we value as love, how generationally the direction we're moving in with love, it poses some incredible questions. And the last movie I wanted to talk about here is Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, which taught me a lot about passion and career drive. So I'm a playwright as well, and a lot of this movie is centered around bringing something to life on stage. It's about bringing something to life on stage and what that means to the people involved, and how obsession to produce and put something out can lead to someone's downfall, how you can go too far, but also how passion and drive is so important. The protagonist is successful throughout the movie because he is passionate, but then it's how it affects his family as well, how he can neglect sometimes the people around him and the negative consequences. And it taught me that even when I am deeply involved in my work, that I should always watch out for the people around me, and that a work and family and social balance is actually very important. As I've gone through points in my life where I've overworked, I've gone through points in my life where I haven't worked enough, and then I've been too social and just spent time with other people when I should have been spending time on myself. And I think that movie really helped me strike a balance that I've now got. So I just wanted to go into some of the comments that people had. Movies that they have enjoyed. And I would recommend watching pretty much all of these. Even if I haven't seen them, it's changed someone's life. Maybe it can help you too. The first movie we have is from Richard. Richard recommends Top Gun because it made him want to join the Navy and learn to fly. Sometimes a movie, just because it's subject matter and the nature of what they're talking about, it can lead to not necessarily even a career change, but just things you think about. You don't even know that this is something that you wanted to consider. I know I had a friend who basically wanted to become a concierge because of the Grand Budapest Hotel. It can happen. Next we have William Francis, who talks about Lilo and Stitch. He says, it was the first real film that I loved. I found myself a lot in Stitch as a character, trying to fit in with society, not knowing what he was doing wrong, and not knowing the world in the same way as everyone else does. And that's very poetic. Thank you for that, William. And I know what you mean. It's a great thing from an outside perspective. It can help someone who feels like an outsider to feel more included, because it's a very inclusive property. I know I used to watch it quite a lot growing up. Stitch has that feeling, and also quite a warm presence as well for all the people around him. Just puts a smile on your face, that. Next we had Alex. She messaged in saying The Fifth Element, as Lilo was her first female role model. I think role models are actually quite an important one for this. Somewhere where you can look at a character and just see them as someone you want to be, someone you aspire to be, whether career-wise, whether personality-wise, whether confidence-wise. And Lilo is a hero within that movie. And a lot of people would just see The Fifth Element as just a out-and-out action movie. Some see it as just pure sci-fi spectacle. Others see it as a triumph over evil. But you've taken away a role model, Alex. I know that there's a lot of the movies I enjoy tend to not have more of a quote-unquote good guy sort of character. The Place Beyond the Pines, all the characters do very poor stuff. Drive is another movie I absolutely adore. No Country for Old Men. Not characters I'd say I look up to as role models, but all who have values that are very strong. So in Drive, for example, he's just trying to fix a relationship and escape a very tortured past. The character, again played by Ryan Gosling. And in No Country for Old Men, you've got a chase, a very intense chase, and you've got a lot of moral battles, especially from Llewellyn, and about why he took the money at the start of that movie and where it's going to lead him. Next, we had Eleanor. She messaged in saying, Cinderella with Lily James and Richard Madden. This is because it inspired me to have courage and to be kind, and anything is possible, and believing in a little bit of magic. So really like that. Cinderella, very classic story. Very easy to associate the characters with. I think the characters were sort of designed to be very relatable. I've seen Cinderella put to stage a few times, and yeah, it's another one of those feel-good stories, a little bit of magic, and a great all-around story. I'd recommend, easily. I assume you've all heard of Cinderella. I mean, everyone has. It's just one of those things that's rubbed off on society so much you can't escape it. And we have more modern classics like Lion King. It's another one of those movies that everyone's seen, everyone's heard of. And especially if you go back to sort of the originals, it shows that animated movies aren't just for kids, I think. I've seen some amazing animated movies more directed towards adults, and some that, for both age brackets, there's something really to gain. I know Isle of Dogs, which was by Wes Anderson, it came out in 2017, I do believe, or 2018. And that movie was directed more towards adults, and it was animated. Next was Ludovecchio. He messaged in saying, Cinema Paradiso, 1988. You can do anything you want. Just do it and don't look back. And if a movie empowers you to take a step, whether it be career-wise, relationship-wise, friendship-wise, then that movie becomes kind of invaluable to you. I know I saw a couple of weeks ago the movie Booksmart with my sister, as she's sort of within that age bracket that the movie discusses, and absolutely loved it. Really, really fun time. And I'd say, because I just enjoyed the movie for the humour, that just spending time with my sister was what I took away from that film. And it wasn't even the film in the end, it was just the taking time with my sister. It was talking to her afterwards, it was seeing her smile and enjoying the jokes. There's something there for everyone. Next is Georgia. She messaged in saying Moulin Rouge, as it made her believe in love. And what a beautiful little message. Not actually seen Moulin Rouge, and I feel quite bad. It's going to show just how bad I am as a film student that I haven't seen a lot of movies, because there's a lot of movies on this list that I haven't seen. But I hope to remedy that by going through some movies that I have seen that I really do enjoy. So, Moulin Rouge made you believe in love. Again, that's a similar experience that I had with the movie Her, Spike Jonze, and the Fountain as well. Movies that make you believe, and Your Name as well. All films that make you think that it is out there, whether, no matter what experience you've had regarding love in your life, whether positive, negative, all of it flows. She's picked out this specific example, and this is the one that stuck with her. And I think it can also depend on what you see at the time, growing up. Next, we have Marina. Marina messages in saying Brooklyn, because when the priest says to her, the sun will come out one day and you won't even realise it, about being in a better place eventually. And I think that's a powerful message, and what it's saying to me is that the film says that you don't necessarily notice when something good is happening, because you're just in the flow, you're in the moment. You don't notice there's not a moment in your life where it just suddenly goes from mundane to good. It just happens progressively. I know that personally in my own life, I've not just sat down and said there's that one moment that changed it all. You'll just look back one day and realise that actually the sun's been out for a little while and you didn't even notice it. Great movie, by the sounds of things. And I believe stars Saoirse Ronan, which I've seen her in some amazing stuff. She was amazing in Loving Vincent. And whilst my opinions on Lady Bird were mixed, her acting was definitely one of the highlights of that movie, even though, despite popular opinion, I wasn't a massive fan of Lady Bird. And I saw that with my sister and we sort of agreed. But if that opinion goes against what you think, let me know in the comments. I'd like to talk about it. It's another one of those movies where I'm not sure what most people think about it. And yeah, if there's any of these movies below that I'm going to mention in the description or in this video that you've seen or haven't seen and want to talk about, let me know. Let me know if I'm wrong about some of them. Let me know if I'm right about some of them. I'm surely no film expert. I'm just a film student. So if you've got an opinion about these films, let me know. And not that this is even relevant to the podcast, but I'm just sitting on the river at the moment seeing some European goldfinches, I do believe, or at least they're goldfinches, birds with sort of yellow tails. They sort of dip when they fly. I just thought I'd point that out. Really lovely, beautiful view we've got out here today at the end of June in Kent. Obviously, we're a very Kent-based show, but if you aren't from Kent, thank you for listening in. It's always great to hear people from all over listening in to the show as well. And very excited to be bringing you a lot of new content coming down the pipeline as we go. We've got, in fact, Eleanor, who we mentioned earlier. She's going to be talking about acting very soon. We've got solo travelling with Mike. We've got a lot of episodes being recorded in and around the same time. I'm so excited to be bringing all of them to you. And I was amazed at how many people responded to this question. When I did this similar sort of question posing for the social media, didn't get as many responses. Really great responses, but not quite as many. And this has just hit a chord with people. I have had so many amazing responses. Next we move on to Tom. Tom just says Gandhi. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because we have someone else later who mentions Gandhi, but Gandhi, that's all he has to say. Next we had John. John messaged in saying too many to count, but as a father, it's got to be Finding Nemo. Once my first son arrived, it was that moment when he picks up that egg and he knows he will do anything to keep his son safe. And what I take away from this, and it's a beautiful story, John, is that with films, it depends when you see it in your life sometimes. Maybe if John had seen this a couple of years before having a child, it wouldn't have had the same impact that it had when he saw it after having his first kid. It's like seeing a movie about death after a loved one passing away. The movie can stick with you based on your real life experience, and that's what's happened to John here. And I'm sure whenever he thinks now about keeping his son safe, he's thinking about Finding Nemo. And as a kid, I was very young when Finding Nemo came out. I just saw it as quite a fun animated movie. And I'm sure for me, if I'm ever to have children later on, it will be a different movie for me. But the strong message was there for John, and that's what resonated for him. Now, Chris messaged in saying Gandhi 2, actually, was far too young really to have watched it. It's the first time I felt there's been a fundamental moment of recognition that there's good and evil, and that good people too suffer pain. And I think that's quite good. I love movies that have that grey area where you have good and bad, and that there isn't just a black and white situation. It's like with The Place Beyond the Pines. I know two very different movies, but that movie sticks out because I've just seen it. None of the characters, even the ones that are quoted as heroes in the movie, none of the characters are without fault. They all make big mistakes that contribute to the downfall of each other throughout the movie. But good people can suffer too, so even the best characters in that movie suffer. And I haven't actually seen the Gandhi movie. I know it's about 3 hours long, and I want to check it out, but it's a good moment of realisation, because a lot of other films, whether rightly or wrongly, and there are a lot of good examples that do this, can have quite black and white good versus evil. Think Die Hard, for example. You've got one good guy against an army of baddies. You have good versus evil. There's a lot of that in very classic films as well. Good versus evil is quite well known, but to blend the two and to know that good can suffer, and it's okay for good to suffer, and just because they're suffering doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's a beautiful film to have that message. Next is Amelie. Well, that's the name of the movie, messaged in by Laura to say Amelie. She said, "It made me want to be better, a kinder person, and help people and spread sunshine and love." Thank you for that message, Laura. And if Amelie made you want to feel like being a better person, it's seeing something in that character. It's recognizing a part of you in a character. It's like what I said earlier about recognizing himself in Stitch. Even though Stitch is an alien, you see bits of yourself in all of these characters, and you see parts that you want more of you to be. You see parts that you don't necessarily want to be, and it gives you more perspective. I think film really is about that, seeing different lifestyles, seeing different people. I know that I watched the start of Reminiscing on a Trip to Lithuania, which is a film from the 70s about Lithuanians who had just moved to Brooklyn in America after the Second World War ended. And that showed me a Eastern European perspective of America in the 50s. And that opened my eyes. I hadn't even thought about it. And it was such a unique angle as well. Really recommend it. Really recommend that movie. And very unique storytelling techniques as well. It's not a typical movie. It's experimental. It feels like I'm watching something I shouldn't be. It feels like a piece of the past. But it's that same sort of thing where you see someone different, something different to you, because all films have that, and you can strive to be like or to not be like the characters and situations you're seeing. It can inspire you, and that's what it's done for Laura here. Next we have Harry, who we've had on the podcast before. If you listen to episode 2 of the podcast, you will hear Harry and I talking about collecting, as we're both Lego collectors. But Harry had to say, Ghost Rider, The Spirit of Vengeance. It was the first ever superhero movie that I wanted to see, and watching last night made me appreciate how it led me down this path in life. Harry is also a fellow film production student, so I imagine this inspired him to come on the course. This inspired him to be more within film. And he's rewatched the movie, he's gone back, he's seen it again, and now he's looking back, like what we said earlier about from Brooklyn, where Marina mentioned that the sun will come out one day and you won't even realise it. Harry's rewatched this movie for the first time last night in a little while, and it's made him realise, looking back, how far it's brought him. And that's a beautiful thing. I know the film that actually got me into cinema studies was Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I watched the behind the scenes of that movie more than I've watched any other behind the scenes of any movie ever. I watched the behind the scenes more than the film itself. And say what you will about the green screen, I loved it. I was fascinated by how green screens worked as a kid. And that movie really hit me. Loss, sacrifice, despair, love. Even though I know that the prequels are fundamentally quite flawed as well, absolutely loved it. And it got me into film. And I watched it when it came out, 2005. I was young. I was in primary school when I saw it. But that was when I knew film, radio, audio, visuals, interacting, storytelling was what I wanted to do. And it's just been a case ever since of funneling it into something. And that film was what kickstarted it. I made lightsaber props and filmed lightsaber duels as a result. Next, Edie messages in. She's a University of Kent student studying film as well. Dead Poet Society totally changed the way I look at films and made me appreciate the educators and friends in my life. Also, writing my DPS essay got me into film studies. So this film has quite a unique thing for you, Edie. It's not only helped you appreciate the people around you a little bit more, but writing the essay on it and getting you into film studies, that is always going to stick with you, because when you write an essay about a film, you tend to get more into it. I wrote about Darren Aronofsky for an essay, and I appreciated his films on a whole new level. There was just something about experiencing his movies and then learning more about the context, learning about his personal relationships, his real life. You just gain a much greater understanding. I'd say if you've got a favourite film or a favourite director, watch their movies, then research about them, and then go back and watch them again. You will gain something completely different. If you realise a director's split up from a partner, and then you see that movie again, and you see the protagonist as that director, and their partner as that partner, maybe there's something new to take from that. Maybe they made a drastic career change at 25, and it's reflected in one of their early films, because there's always a piece of a director in every movie. I got that from when I did my essay writing, and Edie's taken something away from writing about Dead Poet Society, and also appreciating the people around her. That's great news, because it means she's reflected inwards. She's looked inside and seen that she should be appreciating the people around her more. And that's a great thing, because that'll just rub off on the people around her as a beautiful thing. 3 more comments to go. Thank you so much for listening so far. Let me know what you think about recording outside, because we've got the river right next to us. It's a little bit loud, but I hope it's not too loud. It's absolutely gorgeous out here today. And let me know if you like this sound, this ambience, because traditionally we've tried to keep the podcast quite talky between 2 people. But let me know if you like the fact that it's just one-on-one. It's just me and you today on the show, and it's just us and nature around us. Do you like it? Maybe I should go to a quieter part, but maybe still be outside? Let me know. I'm wanting to change up the podcast to your liking, take on suggestions, try new things. That's what this episode is. We're trying something a little different, like we did with episode 5. Bit different. Hope you enjoy it. Still got plenty of guests coming up. Don't you worry. We've still got plenty of episodes with lots of very interesting guests. And if you want to get involved in the My Generation podcast, contact the Facebook page. The link will be in the description, along with all of the movies that we've discussed on today's episode. We've got so much coming up, and you can be a part of it as well, whether you're commenting like all of the wonderful comments we've had on this show today, or you can actually feature on the show. please do message the page. We have lots of topics we are still looking for people to talk about. Meditation's one of them. Yoga, travelling. Even if you're into film, music. Those are the subjects I want to talk about next. Do let me know by messaging or leaving a comment. Any way you can. We are always willing to listen to you. Also, my email in the description as well. So back to the topic. Jack Weeks. He messages in saying Pacific Rim. As a kid, I always was interested by mecha kaiju anime, but never had the opportunity to get into it. When Pacific Rim was released, I realised just how great giant monster movies can be if the scale and cinematography is done right. What I take away from Jack's comment here is he didn't feel like he could get into the previous generation of mecha kaiju anime because maybe he missed it because he was too young when it came out. And Pacific Rim rebooted it for a new generation, and I think that's incredible. I take the same feeling away from Star Wars. I wasn't there when the original trilogy was out, so I didn't feel that hype. I was sort of there for the prequels. I was a kid though, very young, and I was definitely there for The Force Awakens, and I kind of enjoyed The Force Awakens. It was a soft reboot, but I enjoyed parts of it, and seeing people so hyped about Star Wars again, I was there in a way that I wasn't for 77. I would have loved to have. I'd have loved to have seen it. But, as you said, it reboots it for a new generation. Got the same feeling with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. People had the comics growing up. I missed the trend. I've never been a comic book fan. I got onto the hype train of Marvel movies just before Infinity War and managed to fully immerse myself within the culture by the time Avengers Endgame came out, and I was there. I knew everything that was happening. It was all hitting me, all affecting me live on the screen with all the people around me. And Jack, you've got the same thing here from Pacific Rim. And next we have Callie. Callie messages in saying Stoker, because the cinematography and controversial themes and characters taught me that you don't have to go along with the norm, and Saving Private Ryan because it made me fall in love with films in general. Again, I think, like me and Revenge of the Sith, it's good to have that movie that you know you saw that made you love film. But I like the idea of breaking the norm. I know Callie well because I worked on one of her films, and I can definitely say that she is a film director who likes to break the norm. She has built her own very, very unique style, and working on that movie really opened my eyes to a student filmmaker with a very different lens that she views the world through. And it stands out. I'm not going to forget the style of her film. I'm not going to forget how she made it. And part of that can rub off on me. And I think if you go against the norm in a great way, it will rub off on people. You remember the films that do. I saw A Ghost Story in 2017, and that movie stuck with me. That was a absolutely beautiful telling of life and death, suffering, being trapped. But it was all told by a character who's under a ghost sheet, a child's ghost sheet, like one of those party ones you'd have as a kid. One of my favourite movies of all time. Takes so many risks, but those are the ones that pay off, aren't they? Even The Place Beyond the Pines. Quite a simple plot, but the movie takes very big risks, and there's 2 or 3 massive plot twists. I recommend watching both of those without checking out a single trailer. Go in not knowing anything. Amazing content. Next we're going to be talking about Meg Campbell. Next up we have a Meg who said Midnight in Paris. The concept just stuck with me, with the time jumps and whatnot. It was so ridiculously pretty, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And I think time jumps and emotional cues are very important to movies, and it's one of what cinema is unique for. You can cut and jump and splice. You can have a character look in a direction and then suddenly you're back in the past. In fact, I've stopped watching the movie to come and record this. I'm halfway through watching Blue Valentine at the moment, and that movie has the same sort of thing. You have there's a moment, again it stars Ryan Gosling. Seem to love all his movies. There's a moment he looks away, and then suddenly you're back in the present day, and then later on you realise that was the first interaction he was having with someone who'd go on to be his wife. Beautiful, seamless. You can only get that feeling in film. And Midnight in Paris, a great movie as well, very beautiful. It paints Paris in a beautiful light. And say what you will about how movies can sometimes glamorize a city in a way that it's not, there's something to be said for finding the beauty in the place that you're living in. I live here in Kent. I'm currently recording along the River Stour at the moment. Gone for a lovely little walk. Weather's absolutely beautiful. I'll probably be taking some pictures throughout the day. And there's something to be said about trying to make the most beautiful out of each place that you're in. And the director's gone to Paris to make Midnight in Paris, and he's made something beautiful. He's seen a city in a certain lens. Because there's something to be said about movies that take a location and make them dirty, make them bad, show them for what they are, make it really raw. And there's a place for that. I think that if I'm thinking of examples that show that, again, The Place Beyond the Pines, you've also got 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which doesn't glamorize Missouri, or the place outside Missouri. It just shows it for what it is. Drive, No Country for Old Men. They don't glamorize the places. You've got Requiem for a Dream, another movie I didn't touch on. I used to be very addicted to video games, and Requiem for a Dream showed me how addictions big and small can spiral. Because I played a lot of video games. I was playing about 4 or 5 hours a day, and that's quite a lot when I was growing up, when I was sort of 14, 15 years old. And I saw that movie when I was about 17, and I didn't really play video games, to be honest, that much afterwards. It showed me how sickening an addiction can be. And video games isn't the worst. If you can control it, fine. But it was one of those things I felt I couldn't control. I couldn't just play casually. I was all or nothing. And Requiem for a Dream was one of the movies that made me stop. Because you've got Sarah Goldfarb in that movie, who's just struggling with her weight. And it leads to her taking pills and getting addicted to the pills. And the spiral is crazy. She just wanted to go on telly. And it's how something so small ends up spiraling into the worst possible things. Amazing movie, by the way. Really harrowing. You will never forget Requiem for a Dream. It is absolutely scarred into the back of my head. Because it does things. It's just a crazy movie. It's the most raw thing. But on the flip side, Midnight in Paris, a director and a cinematographer has taken a vision, something that they love, a place they love, and they've tried to show it in a beautiful way because that's how they love it. So, that wraps up all of the comments that we've had on this week's episode of the My Generation podcast. I really, really hope you've enjoyed listening. So we've had sort of back-to-back, or well, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a few episodes in a row that have been just me talking to you one-to-one. Let me know what you think of these episodes in this sort of format. Don't worry, we've still got tons of episodes with tons of guests lined up. But do tell me what you thought of this format. I'm not going to do much editing on this audio. I'm going to keep this quite raw as I can. It's going to be a very different episode. It's not going to be polished. There's not going to be questions for a guest. No guest today. It's just going to be me talking. Me and you talking, interacting out in nature, talking about films, talking about a passion. If you like these kind of episodes, let me know. I'd love to do more of them, but I will only do more of them if you enjoy them. If you prefer the guests, I have so many episodes with so many guests lined up. We have Solo Travelling with Mike that's just been as well. We have Eleanor talking about acting. We've got Emma talking about her film photography as well. Stephen talking about trains. And in fact, we've got a returning guest. One of the first podcast episodes we did was with Daniel Inwood. And we talked about social media detoxing on that first episode. We're going to be talking to him again very, very soon. Very soon. We're going to be talking to him about life-changing moments. And in a way, this topic has actually been about life-changing moments. Because you've seen a film, and it's changed something for you. We're going to be talking to Dan about his specific examples and diving deeper into one person's specific story. But I like this, where we're able to also get a more broad story today. We've been talking to lots of different people, getting lots of different films for you to watch, linking them all below. I'd recommend you check all of them out. I'm going to put my recommendations at the top of the description, and then just below that, all the other recommendations from all of our commenters here and why they loved those films. Going to link you again to Dan Inwood's podcast. He was the first guest we had. And Harry Monday, where we talked about collecting. He was a commenter on today's show. So thank you for commenting, Harry. But again, we're always looking for guests to talk on the podcast. I wanted to come out here into the nature to talk today, as there's a lot of commentators that I like to follow on YouTube who talk when they're outside. I feel like I've got a little bit more energy talking out here. I'm not just at room voice. It's a great place to be to talk to people. And it's just a very different setting. Another movie again, The Fountain, that got me quite close to nature was because one of the themes in the movie, it talks about a Mayan that died, a Mayan priest that died. The character of Izzy talks about this. And when he was buried with a seed in his grave, in his chest, I think. They put a seed, or just on him. And then that tree sprouted and grew into a tree. And then he grew into that tree and became part of the bark and the wood. And then he flew with the birds that would live on that tree. And I think that's beautiful, because then death becomes beautiful. It breeds new life. And no matter how religious you are, and the movie doesn't really force religion down your throat, but that was one of the things I took away from it, that bit. That it's not something to fear, death and loss, because it always leads to something new. And that new can be beautiful. And that man was flying with the birds. And I think that's pretty incredible to say, because then you can look at every single tree and think about all of the death, but also life and beauty that's gone into that. You can see every single plant, every single flower. It's been planted by someone. It's been cultivated. The green of the grass. That's what that movie left me with. And again, we've had slightly shorter episode today, but the ones with just me and you tend to be a tad bit shorter, as with the guests, the time just seems to fly. But I've really enjoyed talking, just one-to-one, me and you talking about films. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is there a film that's inspired you? Because if there is, in a future episode, we'd like to go back to comments that we get. And at the moment, we're trying to batch up a few episodes to go out across summer, so that we've got you covered all the way through summer 2019 here on the My Generation podcast. But we go back to comments, and we're going to be going back to them. So if you have thoughts, leave them in the comments. We'll be coming back to you very shortly with Eleanor, Mike, Dan, Emma. They've all got things to say, stories to tell, and we want to hear from you. We'll be back in touch with you with another episode of the My Generation podcast very soon. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Let me know what you think. Want to keep the dialogue going, want to get to know your thoughts. And I will see you in the brand new episode next Thursday at 6 p.m. Thank you all for listening.